that water.
What is traffic? Oh, no, 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 that's water. That's water.
Ladies and gentlemen, what is happening in the United Arab Emirates is no longer just an ordinary rain event. This is a rare meteorological incident, an extreme weather episode that has pushed many areas across the UAE, particularly Dubai, Sharjah, and Abu Dhabi, into a state of severe disruption. In a region known for its hot, dry climate, intense sunshine, and desert landscape, days of continuous rainfall have created an almost unbelievable contrast. Streets turning into rivers, residential areas surrounded by water, vehicles breaking down en masse, and urban infrastructure revealing its limitations. From the very beginning, the abnormal signs were clearly visible. This was not a short, localized rain that quickly passed. Instead, it was persistent, repeated rainfall that gradually saturated the ground, leaving water with no ability to drain, as it normally would. What was once considered rare in a Gulf country became reality. Water accumulated rapidly, spread widely, rose quickly, and directly overwhelmed urban living spaces. The issue here is not just heavy rain. The real problem is heavy rain occurring in a desert environment, where infrastructure is typically designed to handle heat, dust, and dryness. But when water pours down too quickly and for too long, the entire operational logic of the city begins to fracture. Roads built for speed, commerce, and constant movement are brought to a halt by water. Low-lying areas, underpasses, and major intersections turn into flood traps, right in the heart of a modern city. This is a powerful warning that even wealthy, highly developed urban centers, those that appear to have full control over technical risks, can still be seriously vulnerable to extreme weather if infrastructure planning fails to keep pace with changing climate realities. From this point, the crisis begins to shift from a weather event into a full-scale urban operational breakdown. As water rises across road surfaces, transportation becomes the first system to collapse. And in the next part, we will clearly see just how quickly a modern city can become paralyzed when rainfall exceeds the limits of its infrastructure.
It's about to be on us. There it goes.
As the rain continued to pour down, the consequences became most visible across transportation networks. In Sharjah, severe flooding submerged streets, leaving many drivers stranded in rising waters. Police had to directly assist those trapped in their vehicles, especially in underpasses and low-lying areas. Locations that once served as critical traffic links suddenly became the most dangerous zones, as water not only rose rapidly, but also accumulated deeply, blocking all escape routes. In Dubai, the impact was even more pronounced due to its role as a major transportation and logistics hub, with extremely high traffic density. Areas near airport routes, transport centers, and intercity gateways began experiencing severe congestion. Water pooled across roads, vehicles lined up for long distances, and traffic flow slowed dramatically. When transportation is disrupted for hours, the consequences go far beyond inconvenience. It quickly spreads into logistics, aviation, services, and the entire rhythm of urban life. One of the most notable examples mentioned is Suqeim Street, where water overflowed across multiple lanes, causing traffic to crawl in chaotic conditions. What makes this particularly significant is that these are not secondary roads. They are major arteries responsible for distributing large volumes of traffic throughout the city. When such routes become congested due to flooding, the rest of the transportation network begins to experience cascading pressure. Public transportation was not spared either. Bus routes were forced to change in order to avoid heavily flooded areas, but each reroute left passengers in a reactive state, facing delays. Missed connections, confusion, and uncertainty about which routes were still operational. For those traveling between major urban centers, this disruption was no longer a minor inconvenience, but a complete breakdown of their daily plans. Above ground, the pressure was just as significant. Airlines were forced to advise passengers to check their flight schedules and arrive at airports earlier than usual. This detail alone shows how instability had reached one of the most tightly managed systems. When severe weather begins to threaten operations at major airports, the issue is not limited to a few delayed flights. It creates a chain risk across logistics, tourism, international transit, and even the operational credibility of a key aviation hub in the region. And as both road and air transportation systems began to falter, the next impact became inevitable. Everyday life for residents started to bear the full weight of the disaster. In the next part, we will see more clearly how this crisis has directly affected the daily lives of people on the ground. A disaster only fully reveals its destructive power when it directly impacts people. And, in this event, that reality is unmistakably clear. As streets became deeply flooded, many residents across the UAE were forced to completely alter their daily routines. Some abandoned their vehicles in the middle of the road. Others continued on foot through waterlogged streets, trying to reach their workplaces or return home. In Abu Dhabi, even as central districts were submerged, some residents still waded through flooded roads to maintain their jobs. These images reflect not only human resilience, but also the immense pressure placed on the functioning of society. One particularly notable detail is that floodwaters swept away vehicle license plates in many areas. For some, this may seem like minor damage, but in reality, it indicates that the force of the water was strong enough to directly impact vehicles, creating additional financial and administrative burdens for residents. In urban disasters, damage is not always about collapsed buildings or major casualties. Sometimes it is the accumulation of thousands of smaller losses: damaged vehicles, lost documents, disrupted mobility, interrupted income, and unexpected expenses. Amid these conditions, the role of community began to stand out. People helped one another recover lost belongings, assisted those who were stranded, and shared information about accessible routes. When a city falls into disorder due to flooding, these kinds of responses become critically important. They show that when infrastructure is under stress, society must create temporary support networks to absorb the shock. However, not everyone has the option to stop. Many workers were forced to continue their duties under dangerous conditions. The image of delivery personnel wading through chest-deep water is particularly striking. It highlights the uneven impact of disaster. While some residents can stay home, others must take risks to maintain their income or keep essential services running. In a modern city, frontline workers are often the first to bear the cost when infrastructure fails. Meanwhile, municipal teams and emergency services worked continuously to pump out water, clear blocked areas, support traffic flow, and minimize damage. Authorities repeatedly issued warnings, urging residents to avoid unnecessary travel and prioritize safety. Yet even these efforts underscore the scale of the situation. When warnings must be repeated and emergency operations sustained over time, it signals that the disaster has surpassed normal response thresholds. So, what made this episode of heavy rainfall so dangerous? The answer lies in the meteorological nature of the storm and the deeper limitations within urban design. To understand the cause of this event, we need to look at two parallel layers of factors: meteorological causes and infrastructure-related causes. Simply saying, because of heavy rain, is not enough. Many places around the world experience heavy rainfall, but the level of impact is not the same. This storm system formed from a combination of moisture, unstable air, and pressure differences, resulting in rainfall levels rarely seen in the region. This type of weather pattern is strong enough to turn an arid climate into an environment receiving water volumes far beyond its immediate drainage capacity. The rain was not just intense for a brief moment. It persisted over several days, saturating the ground, preventing water from draining quickly, and thereby prolonging the duration of disruption. However, it is the second layer of causes that made this disaster particularly severe from an urban perspective: the limitations in drainage system design. In many desert regions, drainage infrastructure is not built to handle extremely large volumes of rainfall, like those seen in tropical or temperate climates. When actual water volumes exceed expectations, the system becomes overwhelmed almost immediately. Water cannot drain in time, accumulates on road surfaces, floods underpasses, flows into low-lying areas, and turns major intersections into hazardous zones. This event is not just an isolated heavy rain incident, but a clear test of the urban model in a desert environment. When weather conditions exceed expectations, systems that function well under normal circumstances quickly reveal their weaknesses. This shows that cities can no longer be designed based solely on past climate data. If extreme weather events continue to occur more frequently, risks will increase and become harder to control. And even after the water recedes, the challenges of urban planning and adaptation remain unresolved. As weather conditions gradually improved, efforts to restore normal operations were accelerated. Authorities and emergency teams continued pumping out water, clearing roads, and working to reconnect daily life in affected areas. But in urban disasters, the moment water begins to recede has never meant that the crisis is over. What remains after such events is not just mud or stalled vehicles. It is a series of strategic questions about the resilience of the entire system. The event in the UAE clearly shows that extreme weather is no longer a problem limited to countries that frequently face storms and floods. Even arid regions, once considered at low risk of widespread flooding, can now be pushed into emergency situations after just a few days of prolonged rainfall. This makes traditional approaches to urban planning increasingly unsafe. If infrastructure continues to be built on the assumption that this is a place where heavy rain is rare, then each future extreme weather event will push society into a state of surprise, unpreparedness, and costly consequences. One detail worth noting is that amid the chaos, the transcript mentions a temporary positive effect: improved air quality due to reduced traffic and pollutants being washed away by rain. However, this benefit is short-lived and fragile, and it cannot outweigh the reality that the cost of that improvement includes economic disruption, social disorder, and heavy strain on infrastructure. In other words, nature may clean the air for a brief moment, but at the same time, it is washing away the illusion that humans have full control over their environment. The biggest issue left behind by this event is not a flooded road or a delayed flight. The real issue is that it forces urban planners and authorities to confront limitations that were previously masked by growth and modernization. Any city can appear efficient, wealthy, and well-functioning under normal conditions. But a truly resilient city is one that continues to operate when weather conditions deteriorate, when systems are under pressure, and when so-called exceptions must be treated as real scenarios. For the UAE, especially Dubai, Sharjah, and Abu Dhabi, this extreme rainfall event is a harsh test. It highlights the urgent need to upgrade drainage systems, reassess low-lying areas, improve transportation resilience, and most importantly, rethink urban planning in the context of increasingly complex climate risks. Failing to act now means accepting that another unusual rainfall event in the future could once again push the entire urban system into a similar, or even more severe, state of disruption. And that is the final message of today's story. This disaster is not just about the UAE. It is a broader warning for modern cities that believe today's infrastructure is sufficient to protect them against tomorrow's climate. When nature shifts its rhythm, cities must adapt as well. Otherwise, it may take only a single rare rainfall event to bring down the sense of security that people have worked so hard to build. If you are currently living in or traveling within this area, please share your real situation in the comments so everyone can stay updated. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the latest analyses of events happening around the world.